Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, a very warm welcome to this latest episode of Keys, our monthly broadcast to our clients all around the world. Now it's day 191, if you've been counting, of the year, and what a year it's been so far. And we thought it might be a good moment to get together and reflect on what we're learning, perhaps think about whether we need to look at things from some different angles, possibly change tack, and generally pause. So thank you to my wonderful panel who are with me today, who are going to help us reflect on some of those learnings in our first 191 days. So with us today, we have Mallory, who is in Washington, who's going to help us think about what we're learning when it comes to knowing the new America. We're then going to stay in the US and be in New Jersey with Jason, who is going to be reminding us of some of the key ingredients of a good reputation, a resilient reputation, one that's fit for the future. Thank you in advance for your thoughts, Jason. We'll then be in Geneva with Arno, who is fresh back from a very major communications event in Cannes, which he's going to be talking to us about and helping us think through what great communications looks like this year. And we're going to be still thinking about opportunities with Annie, who's based in Hong Kong, and she's going to be helping us understand what's happening in different markets across Asia and where some of those opportunities lie. We've got time for questions as we go through, and so please put them in the chat, and we will pose them to the panel before we finish. So looking forward to your input during the session. And we are Ipsos after all, so we do have a certain number of slides to share with you. If you like them, don't worry, we're going to be sending them to you tomorrow in your inbox, and alongside that there'll be a recording of the session as well. So we hope this material is useful to you in the work that you're doing. But without further ado, it's time to think perhaps of the story of the year, so far at least, which I think is, whichever country we're in, Donald Trump's second non-successive presidency. Mallory, help us know the new America that little bit better.
Great. Thank you, Simon. I'm happy to be here today with you and my co-panelists. Greetings, everyone, from wherever you're joining us from. I'm Mallory Newell. I'm a vice president and one of the leads of our public polling practice here in the US. Simon, you've mentioned that phrase, the new America, now a few times. And so here in my time, I'm just going to unpack a little bit more about what that means. And then we'll dive into some of the latest and greatest Ipsos public polling data and try and contextualize what it means today. Again, really, I think we are in a time of uncertainty. That's not necessarily new, but I think the 2024 election revealed certainly a more nuanced America, and maybe some trends that had kind of already been under the surface have come to light. We know, first of all, that our society has been highly polarized, but relying on only traditional political party affiliation is no longer sufficient today. And so again, before we get into some of our trends and what we're seeing in the data, I want to underscore that there's sort of three central themes that seem to be governing where we are right now. The first is that there is widespread and extremely pervasive distrust in our society today. This is not a new phenomenon. This is not unique to the US, but we are in an environment where distrust in institutions is pervasive, and that has significant impacts. The second, as I mentioned, political party affiliation explains a lot in the US, but it really is not the sole explainer. I think particularly now in these times of uncertainty, we as researchers, business leaders, and those that engage with consumers in the world around them need to understand these gray areas that exist in our society. And I think because of that, when it's so easy to say the wrong thing, to take a step or a value position, our words matter, right? This is important for us, obviously, as researchers, but also as brands figuring out how they navigate this current landscape. I think Jason's going to touch on some of this a little bit later on, but I think it's important to keep in mind that from a brand perspective, if if you are sort of out there trying to please everyone or take a generic stance on one of the key issues of the day, be it the economy or immigration, there are risks, right? So navigating this landscape is not without risks. And we at Ipsos are here to help our clients navigate this current landscape. So now let's take a look at some of the key trends here. First, I want to start off by talking about the main issue in the economy. We've seen some fluctuation over time, and you see some specific flashpoints that might be causing a little bit of fluctuation. But overall, I think the takeaway is that political extremism and the economy have, for some time, topped the list of main issues, followed by immigration. And those are what I'll be focusing in on today. It cannot be understated just how big of an issue and how much economic uncertainty is sort of the undercurrent of what is going on right now. The vast majority of Americans are concerned about a variety of economic factors, from the current cost of living, inflation, and again, this is perception, right? As I'll show in a moment, this may not match exactly some macro trends. But the concerns about, a future recession and unemployment are still very much top of mind. At the same time, however, we've seen that in our Ipsos polling, consumer confidence has fluctuated quite a bit in recent months, but actually rebounded a little bit in June. While at the same time, we know that some other indicators like the unemployment rate, inflation have sort of eased or are still relatively stable. But again, this perception of how the American public feels about their own economic situation may not be matching some of these macro trends here. And that's creating some sort of what we're calling anticipatory friction around the economy. As we mentioned, obviously, President Donald Trump is in office now for his second term. So we'll take a look at where he stands in this moment and how people are feeling about the political landscape. Now, I'd like to start by actually showcasing some data from Ipsos's Global Advisor platform across 31 countries. This was done earlier this year, and I think it's clear we've seen this unfold in different ways in different places, but these sort of populist sentiments, the economy is rigged to advantage the rich. The elites don't care about hardworking people. Traditional political parties and politicians don't care about people like me. Again, this is not uniquely American. I think we've seen this sort of flavor of populism take root in a number of places around the world, but it is a sentiment that is felt by the majority, both here in the US and people across 31 countries that we surveyed in. So I think that's sort of, again, important context to keep in mind where we're at in this current point in time. Now, as for the president, what this slide is showing is actually an aggregate of approval ratings that are public in the US today. Ipsos polling is included in these poll aggregates, but it's one of many. So there's sort of three different aggregators that we can look at. They're a little bit different based on the polls that they factor in, things like that we don't need to get into, but they are all kind of showing the same trend, right? And what we're seeing here is that from Inauguration Day in January to earlier in the year to about mid-April, we saw a little bit of a decline in President Trump's approval rating, which does tend to happen around the 100-day mark. That's something that we focus in a lot on. But since then, we've sort of seen things kind of level off, and he's currently holding around the low to mid 40% mark. A little bit of a rebound that you see in May that could perhaps be attributed to maybe walking back some of the more immediate or hardline stances on tariffs, and maybe some easing up of some immigration policies, which we'll talk about as well. So when it comes to tariffs, when it comes to the economic environment, again, there is a lot of short-term unease, right? As we can see here, very few Americans, just about 1 in 4, think that current federal tariffs on foreign goods will have a positive impact over the next year. So there's not necessarily a widespread belief that there will be a near-term benefit. However, more do see potential for some long-term benefits, such as creating more manufacturing jobs or leading to goods being manufactured in the US. However, this is one area where there is still a very significant partisan gap. Republicans, the party of Donald Trump, those red bars, very clearly are in favor and agree with the long-term benefits of tariffs, while Democrats in blue certainly do not. So there's mixed sentiments about the economy, both in the short term and the long term. And then very briefly, I'd like to touch on immigration, one of the other key issues of the day, because I do think, and as this chart shows, going all the way back 30 years, that this question of nativism, right? Who really belongs, who is considered an American, and in this particular chart, whether employers should prioritize sort of native-born people over immigrants. I would argue that immigration is one of the biggest political fault lines in American society today, if not the biggest. And it is a great example, as you'll see on the next slide, of the nuance that does exist. It did not used to be such a polarized question if you go back a few decades, but it certainly is now. And again, when you look at policies that the current administration has undertaken on immigration, this is a great example of the nuance that exists and why we can't simply say, Republicans favor immigration restrictions, Democrats oppose, because that's not what's happening here. Support for deportation and for some of the policies that the administration has undertaken are very conditional. Americans tend to be in favor of deporting those with a criminal record or alleged gang members. They tend to be broadly opposed to things like ending birthright citizenship, the constitutional right to citizenship if you're born in the US, or deporting those who were brought here as children. So again, I think this is a great example of the nuance that exists in our society today. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Simon, and thanks for letting me unpack some of what's going on here today.
Well, thank you indeed, and thank you for the work you and the team have done. I've got it on the screen now because there's lots of resources I know you've been pulling together to help us all dive deep into what you're learning. And also, I think the really good thing you remind us of, Mallory, was in the international context, that actually some of this is by no means unique to the US, looking at some of those questions around the broader mood. But just to stay with the US for a moment, I mean, you talked about some of the nuances, some of the differences. What unites America today?
Yeah, that's a good question. And there are still things that do. I think both some good and some bad. So as you saw on my slide, one of the things that unites us, I think, is a great deal of economic anxiety, and sort of this friction that's being felt about people's personal financial situations right now. But on the other side, there are still a number of sort of quintessentially American values that do unite people. And I think are also important, again, brands, and I know that Jason, maybe this is teeing you up a little bit here, but, talking about the importance of values like freedom and fairness. And I think kind of how those connect to brands in a message, in a way that resonates authentically with their consumer base is really important. But there certainly are still these clear values of how businesses can, wade into the landscape now on issues in an authentic way if they are able to convey these values. Again, freedom and fairness tend to top the list here, but those are still very much uniting principles for us.
Lovely. Well, thank you for that, and we're looking forward to keeping track of the evolving situation and as it evolves through the year. You mentioned Jason, so we're lucky. We're staying in the United States for a moment, but like Mallory, Jason has been exploring both the US perspective, but also looking at how it compares with elsewhere in the world. And so we're going to broaden it out and think about corporate reputation. How can we manage and improve our corporate reputation in these turbulent times, Jason?
Fantastic. Thanks, Simon. And Mallory, yes, you've done a wonderful job setting up this next section in giving us that background on what companies are dealing with and how they navigate this new America. I lead our reputation practice here at Ipsos in the US, and we help clients to navigate the issues environment, understand stakeholder perceptions, and develop more effective communications and engagement strategies. And we are in perhaps some of the most challenging and busiest times in terms of the issues environment and how to navigate that. And as Mallory mentioned, what we're dealing with right now is this extremely low level of trust, that this distrust is so high across institutions. And when we look back over the past 50 years in the General Social Survey with over 40,000 US respondents, we see that this aggregate level of trust has reached this all-time low at 24%. And this includes trust in various political organizations, administrative organizations, companies, banks, financial institutions, et cetera. But this is pretty consistent in terms of how this trust has eroded over time, and it really tees up the environment that companies are navigating right now. Now, the expectations of business, though, are nuanced, just like what we see in the population statistics and the polling data is this nuance in America. So given this environment and everything that we're seeing, hearing, reading about from the administration and policies in terms of environmental and sustainability initiatives or diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, we asked Americans just 2 weeks ago through our Ipsos Knowledge Panel, how much do you agree that companies should end their environmental and sustainability programs? And how much do you agree that companies should end their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs? And it is still a minority of respondents in the US who feel that companies should end these programs. Only 1 in 5 feel that environmental and sustainability programs should be ended. 1 in 3 feeling that diversity, equity, and inclusion programs should be ended. And there is a strong partisan divide here. But even amongst that Republican base, you do see that environmental and sustainability programs, there is a consensus that they should not be ended. So this gives us license to still focus on the impact that we have as a company and consider how do we communicate about that impact. And when we look at some of the uniting principles here in America, in addition to freedom and fairness, we see that values can be a motivator. However, you see here, 2/3 of respondents agree that a company's values impact their purchase decisions, but that doesn't necessarily translate into action. You can see that only 1 in 4 indicate that they've currently stopped purchasing from a company because of their stance on politics or current events, that some of them, fewer, are going out of their way to make purchases to support companies based on their politics or current events. There may be some reduced spending. Again, you see 1 in 4 indicating they've reduced spending. And very few are sharing or commenting on things on social media that attack a company. But you can see there is also a partisan divide here in terms of who is most likely to take action. We do see Democrats more motivated to either boycott or boycott a company based on how they are actually taking a stand on key issues or politics. In this environment, it can then be difficult to understand or to figure out how do we engage, where do we engage, what issues should one prioritize. And when you think about 5 years ago, companies were expected to take a stance on every issue. We've clearly seen the pendulum swing in the other direction now, where companies are focusing on areas that are more considered, more aligned to the business. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But in a study that we conducted now for the past 4 years, and we most recently conducted back in the fall, we wanted to understand globally, where should companies focus? Should they focus on protecting the environment? And this was all explained in friendly consumer language, which you can see here on this slide. That means protecting and caring for the natural environment, focusing on waste and pollution, et cetera. Should companies focus on improving society, the treatment of employees, working conditions, impact in their local communities? Or should companies prioritize practicing good governance, tax strategies, executive pay, corruption, et cetera? Consistently over these past 4 years, respondents indicate that companies' priority should be focused on societal impact, followed by environmental impact, and then governance third. But that doesn't mean that this is consistent for all companies or all industries. It's still going to be nuanced depending on how you operate, where you operate, and what industry you're in. So, for example, if you're an automotive company, What you'll see here is that the priority that these global consumers tell us is that environmental issues top the list, followed by some governance issues with a social issue thrown in. That means reducing carbon emissions, innovating new environmentally friendly modes of transport, improving safety and affordability and accessibility. But it's going to be different if you're a food and beverage company, where a social issue is number one on the list, safeguarding consumer health. In this area, you can see why perhaps in the US, the MAHA movement, or Make America Healthy Again, is gaining traction in terms of removing artificial ingredients, sugar, salt, colorings. Whether science-based or perception-based and popularity-based, some of these initiatives are moving forward and do have broad consumer support. But also beyond that, you see environmental issues like using environmentally friendly packaging, or a governance issue like ensuring the safety of products. It's also going to be different though if you are a financial services company. The financial services space, the top issues are dominated by governance issues, followed by a couple of social issues, combating corruption, contributing to local economies, paying appropriate taxes, or curbing excessive pay and bonuses. It's also going to be different and nuanced if you're an oil and gas company, where environmental issues top the list, like investing in renewable energy and reducing carbon emissions, protecting neighboring communities from negative impacts, or maintaining consistent supply of energy. And finally, it's also different if you're a tech company. In tech, we see a broad mix of governance, social, and environmental issues, with governance dominating these top issues: cybersecurity, respecting privacy, preventing the spread of online misinformation or disinformation. But what this shows us is that social initiatives, ESG initiatives, are by no means dead today. It's more nuanced, it's more focused, it's got to be more relevant to the industry that you're in. And this needs to be in that consideration set of how do we engage on key issues and what do our stakeholders expect of us. And based on this, we're often guiding our clients and putting everything through this lens of our PACE framework. First, if you're going to engage on an issue, is it pertinent or is it relevant? Do stakeholders actually prioritize that issue as one of the key issues that they expect us to address? Second is, are we authentic in this space? Do we actually have an authentic voice on this issue? Meaning, can we really talk about this being a part of our mission and values, and we live that every day? Third is, can we credibly engage on this issue? Or are we going to be perceived as greenwashing? Or do we not actually embed these principles in our business operations? Can we truly credibly engage on the issue? And finally, while many companies in the past have often put out statements and engaged on issues, they may not have always been effective. And the last piece of this to actually build credibility, to actually get recognition for the work you're doing, is demonstrating the effectiveness of the programs and the impact that you're having on the issues that you're trying to address. And if you are evaluating things through this PACE framework, you will ensure that what you are doing is hitting on the key issues your stakeholders prioritize in an authentic and credible way that ultimately builds confidence and builds impact for the business. So reputation resilience is, of course, possible in this environment. It is just important to understand in a nuanced way the environment in which we're operating, what stakeholders expect, and how we can engage on those issues. I'll turn it back to you, Simon.
Well, thank you for that tour de force, guided tour of the territory. I love the priorities by sector that the let's say that organisations are being set and how that differs. And actually thinking on that point on ESG, is that something that you're finding clients or companies we're working with shying away from, given everything that's happening?
Great question. So we are finding some companies who are being more nuanced in the messaging around it, or at least, of course, remaining legally compliant, as here in the US, regulations change around diversity, inclusion, things like that. We conduct a study each year called our Ipsos Reputation Council, where we interview about 150 chief communications officers and heads of corporate affairs. And our next wave will release in September, but we've just wrapped up those discussions and we explored that topic. In particular, we were asking about concerns about greenwashing. Are there enhanced concerns right now about greenwashing? And what we've learned actually is the opposite, is that in this environment where everything is under such high levels of scrutiny, companies are really focusing in on making sure that they're telling a story that can be backed by data. If they can actually demonstrate the impact of the work that they're doing and can validate that they really are effective in the space that they're working, they are absolutely communicating about environmental and sustainability issues without the fear of greenwashing. That sense that fear of greenwashing has diminished because of that scrutiny, and they need to ensure that the story is accurate and impactful.
So evidence matters. Okay, well, thank you for that. And questions, by the way, to everyone on the call, please pop them in the chat, and we'll be saving some time just at the end to put your questions to the panel. Now, if you'll be still looking at Jason's slide here, at least a couple of the words you're seeing here, authentic and effective, might be two of them. I think may pop up in Arno's presentation, because he's back from studying adverts and creative brilliance he does throughout the year, but every year he goes to Cannes and is a very big participant at the Festival of Creativity. Arno, welcome back. Tell us what you've learned.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Simon. I'm very happy to report back on Cannes. It is linked to my job as well. I just don't go there to enjoy the beach. It is actually, my job is all about creative development and supporting brands and agencies in doing stronger advertising. And that's indeed what you can expect to learn about in Cannes at the International Festival of Creativity, into which actually Ipsos is taking a large part. And I will be reporting with you the first few highlights that we have. And clearly there was a hotter topic than any other this year. And spoiler alert, it's not AI, it's not PSG, it is empathy and the necessity to reconnect with people. Because when you think about it, and especially listening now to Mallory and Jason and what they flagged, people experience many tensions in our world today, which is perceived as more complex, hostile, uncertain, or some of the words that you can see here on the screen. And this is clearly where empathy matters, because empathy is about understanding and feeling for what's important to people, what tensions they face. And that's clearly something where communication can play a role. But it's not only about that. Empathy is also about how brands can address and reconnect to these people, offering a solution, as Jason, you illustrated as well, because people expect brands to help. And there are many levers that brands can action in reaction to the tensions that people face. So, for example, being more human, being more in the moment, bringing simplicity, being a force for good, being more targeted, more audacious, more in reality. All these are solutions, levers that brands can offer. And as said, in the Cannes Festival of Creativity this year, empathy was very much center stage in many of the talks that you had, from big brands like Apple to Meta to P&G. Of course, on our Ipsos stages, where we share many insights linking to empathy, but also in many of the Lions winners, whether it's ABI or Burger King. And moving to that slide, I don't know if you know this lady. This lady is AC Eggleston from Unilever, and she did flag that as well in a fantastic keynote. She recognized that in a world where machines and agents will increasingly make choices for us, algorithms, we're facing as marketers of fundamental questions. Will our brands matter to people or only to machines? Very particularly, she said that in a dance between data and desire, we found what makes the difference, or humanity. It is not our limitation, and I think that's a nod to what Elon Musk has said. It is our superpower. Humanity is our most powerful advantage in the age of AI. So clearly, we are moving from a world which looks maybe a bit bleak and all synthetic to present reality and humanity, and that's certainly our first trend coming from Cannes. And this is also what Tor Miran, who's VP Marketing and Communications at Apple, said as well on stage. Championing that creativity is all about making sure that you bring a human touch, you keep it real, you make people feel for it. And in that sense, tech and AI are there as a tool at the service of humanity to unleash, amplify creativity. So as he put it on that slide, he says that people should drive, and AI and tech are a tool, they should ride the shotgun. Another great winner this year was KitKat, and they won with the Outdoor Grand Prix with that campaign, which is clearly a very simple and potent way to show how social and smartphones are maybe not the best break or a real break, while KitKat clearly is. And this campaign from Czech Republic actually takes even more meaning when you think about where it was shown, looking at, let me go back once, looking at places where people are all on their smartphones and making a clear statement there about what they should do. Another trend that was showcased is how, with all the uncertainty that you face in the world, people want more and more to enjoy the moment. And this is reflected in a trend that we track in our Ipsos Global Trends, which we call Nouveau Nihilism, which is just showing that people, the majority of people want to live for today because they feel that the future is uncertain and they want to enjoy life. And many Cannes Lions winners this year, played on that trend, on being in the moment and celebrating the moment. Like this campaign from Burger King, which is all about thinking about the moment when you are a mom, you've just delivered your newborn. There is something that you really crave for, which is food and fulfilling food. And this is clearly where Burger King can play a role, feeling that moment. Or you can think about Dove, and Dove, or they are celebrating the moment that you are back from a great party, you are unwinding, you are getting unready, you are getting unprepared, and they are celebrating that moment. And here, for example, when you are back from the Carnival in Rio, or when you are back from St. Patrick's Day, so playing again with these codes. Or another brand, Stella, which is celebrating another moment when you are just managed to place your order in a crowded bar, in a crowded pub, and you can enjoy that first sip of Stella, and that's such a great moment. And clearly you understand at that moment that Stella and your beer is really worth it. So being in the moment and that advertising in the moment is actually becoming more than a trend. It's actually becoming a philosophy or way of working for some agencies. One of them is Rethink in Canada, and they really are focusing on designing ads that are going and campaigns that are going to hit culture and catch moments where speed is the gateway drug to be prolific. They want to start and then think and rethink and to see if they can take things forward. And that is demonstrated by one of their best campaigns from Heinz, where they reacted in less than 24 hours to a post from Taylor Swift, who was speaking about how she liked ketchup and ranch mixed together. And they reacted by launching in less than 24 hours, not just a post, but a product from Heinz that was on the shelf right after, making that magic combination of ketchup and seemingly ranch. So that's also a reflection for research and something that at Ipsos we want to focus more and more to make sure that we can bring as well human insights live in real time in the moment with services such as labs or leveraging AI to bring you insights and data in minutes. A last trend that I want to share with you today is how people are seeing the world as more complex and are looking for simplicity. And indeed, if we look at our Ipsos Global Trends across the world, 61% of people feel overwhelmed by the too many choices that they face in life. And one brand clearly addressed a complex issue with simplicity. This brand is AXA, that earned them the most prestigious award that you could get this year at Cannes, the Titanium Grand Prix, with a great campaign, which is basically showcasing a complex issue, which is domestic violence. When domestic violence hits, it's really tough for women to find a way to be safe and to relocate. So what they did is that they simply added 3 words to their contracts, which do offer relocation in case of fire and flood, and just added that they would also help women relocate and families when domestic violence hits. So a very simple solution to a very complex problem and a great way to move forward in society and to be by the side of people. So this is the end of this teaser, of these few highlights that we can share. What I would suggest you do now is that if you're interested to get the full review, which will be ready just tomorrow, you can reach out to your Ipsos team and ask for an exclusive Cannes review that we can organize for you. Or a second option, if you want to wait a bit back from the summer, you could join our global webinar on October 9, where we'll speak a lot more about these key trends, many more, beyond reality in the moment and simplicity, with a guest speaker from Publicis, Robert van den Heuvel, who will share his perspective as a creative director. Over to you, Simon.
Well, thank you, and we're all looking forward to your analysis and indeed the opportunity to go deeper. So we really appreciate this whistle-stop tour. Just very quickly, because I know you've been to the Cannes Festival on a number of occasions. What have you observed that's changed during the years you've been attending?
Thank you, Simon, for that question. Yes, it brings back a few memories. So I was already in Cannes more than 25 years ago. And what has clearly changed is that you get more and more people, and especially more and more marketers who are joining the festival. It's not just about advertisers, also creators, platforms, and content. So there's more and more learnings, and there's so much to unpack. And what I must say is that this year I was very pleasantly surprised by, a medium or a series of awards that are coming back, which is outdoor. Because outdoor and these key visuals that we've seen together, now you can find them not only, of course, in the street, but also as digital outdoors, as key visual in events, in shopping center, in people's realities as well. And the quality was just mesmerizing.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. That's so interesting, that outdoor point. So yeah, looking forward to getting more analysis from you and the team on that. Thank you, Arno. We'll be back. Any questions for Arno, please put them in the box. And we're going to stay looking at opportunities and looking what lies ahead with Annie. Annie is going to help us better understand where we're heading in markets across Asia and how the consumer landscape is evolving. Annie, thanks for being with us. I know it's very late, so we appreciate you being with us. It's nearly midnight, so thank you. And over to you.
Thank you, Simon. And welcome everyone to Asia. So I want to make sure that I'm in control of these slides. Okay, working. So what's happening here? Of course, Asia is not immune to local headwinds, but on the positive side, Asia is still predicted to maintain a stable GDP growth in the next 5 years, outpacing many other regions. The growth is driven mostly by the developing economies like Vietnam, Indonesia, and India. So the economic resilience in Asia is underpinned by strong domestic fundamentals, a leading role in technological innovation, and the benefits of shifting global supply chains. Unlike the more export-dependent models of the past, many Asian economies are now powered by their own investment and consumption. And countries like India and those in Southeast Asia, such as Indonesia and Philippines, are creating a self-sustaining cycle of growth with the benefit of a growing middle class. And governments in the regions are also actively boosting this trend with different policies to encourage spending of the middle class. Trade within Asia accounts for almost 60% of the region's total exports, and this regional integration helps to offset the impact of the downturn outside the region. The region has also become a hub for technological innovation, and including sectors like AI, robotics, e-commerce, and green technologies. And this leadership in technology is attracting substantial investment to the region. By 2025, Asia is projected to account for over half of all global tech investments. And the ongoing shifts in global supply chains are also creating a significant opportunities for the Asian economies. So US tariffs we have learned about that and have driven companies to diversify their manufacturing bases beyond China. So countries like Cambodia, Vietnam, and India are becoming increasingly attractive destinations. The foreign direct investment getting into these emerging powerhouses is supporting their economic expansion. So as I mentioned earlier, the continuous rise of the affluence is pivotal to the Asia's economic landscape, and it also leads to a fundamental shift of lifestyle, consumption, and economic power in the region. So now let's take a closer look at this driving force. So this region continues to be a global hotspot for wealth creation. The growth of the high net worth individuals population in Asia has been robust over the past years. So India, for example, is consistently identified as the primary driver of wealth growth in the region. And China commands more than 1/3 of the Asia-Pacific wealth management market. The high net worth segment in the Asia-Pacific region is projected to grow 9% between 2024 and 2029. So given the importance of the affluent segment to the region's economies, so it is key to have a good understanding of their lifestyle and beliefs and aspirations. So what we know about the affluent segment in Asia, I will share some key observations of their financial sentiments, predispositions to the luxury category, and the digital behavior. The data you see are from the Ipsos Global Inferential Study. The study targets the top 20% income earning households in 40 markets globally. So despite the global economic uncertainty, over half of the affluent in Asia are actively looking to grow their investment in the next 12 months. And this demonstrates a strong appetite for wealth management services and investment opportunities within this segment. And this group is also more aggressive and willing to take risks for bigger returns. So a high proportion of affluent Asians have taken on medium to high risk investments compared to their counterparts in North America and Europe. And the affluent segment also exhibits a high level of engagement with their investment, especially amongst the high net worth individuals. And they actively manage their personal finances and investment portfolios. They are confident in their financial security and eager to explore new investment avenues. And they are ideal targets for sophisticated financial products and advisory services. So the Asian affluent consumers also actually form a stable demand base for luxury goods and experiences. So our data shows that the proportion of luxury advocates in Asia is much higher than in North America and Europe. It is even higher for individual markets like China, India, Indonesia, and Thailand. These advocates are not just consumers who love buying luxury goods and services. They actively influence others' opinion and purchasing decisions of the category, including both their peers and those who look up to them. And for these luxury advocates, luxury is more than just conspicuous consumption. Brands must prioritize quality, exclusivity, and authentic storytelling to connect with this group of affluents. In terms of the digital behavior, the affluent group also spends a significant portion of their time online. And with a substantial and deeply engaged mobile user base in many developing economies in Asia, it is essential for companies to connect with consumers on their primary screen. And here are some key learnings for brands to capitalize on the opportunities available in the region. The first one is value-driven luxury. The Asian consumers have evolved to go beyond the usual value for money and are willing to pay a premium for the emotional value that a purchase can bring to them. It should be a combination of scarcity, cultural relevance, and storytelling. Even better that something is screen and conversation worthy. How we connect with consumers has to be meaningful. As Arnold pointed out in the previous sessions, so we need to connect with our consumers with empathy and in the moment. Many premium brands are increasingly integrating into the consumer's lifestyle and daily routines, go beyond traditional product offerings. And this involves creating experiences, nurturing community, and leverage on the digital platforms to build deeper connections. To be a trusted brand is also essential. So companies that cultivate high levels of trust are better positioned to weather crises. Consistent findings from our different surveys like Ipsos Global Inferentials and Ipsos Global Trends on this region indicate that a significant majority of consumers tend to stick to their trusted brands during the periods of economic turbulence. Equally important, we are all aware of how digitally connected the consumers in Asia are. Brands that prioritize mobile-first consumer experiences and embrace technology are consistently achieving significant returns. So I hope you find the sharing useful. If you are interested in Ipsos Global Inferentials, please feel free to reach out or visit our Ipsos website. So thank you all, and over to you, Simon.
Well, thank you, Annie, and again, thank you for being with us, because I'm conscious it's getting late. But before we let you go, question: you talked about the digital aspect of things, but of course, one of the features is, I think, of the different Asian markets is that different platforms and different social media channels are more prominent in different countries. Can you just give us a reminder of some of the things we need to watch out for if we're a brand looking to communicate with consumers in front of their screens?
Sure, Simon. We have a very diverse and unique digital ecosystems in Asia. So you need to have a localized and multi-platform strategy for this region. For example, in China, the Western platforms are not available at all. So you have to be on their local ones. So WeChat, the super app, is a must-have. Then you also have Douyin, the Chinese version of TikTok, and the trending social media platforms, Webnote, what we call here Xiaohongshu. So these are very important channels to engage consumers. And when you look at Southeast Asia, Facebook and Instagram are widely used, but local apps and e-commerce platforms like Line, KakaoTalk for South Korea, Shopee and Grab, they are all influential for the digital and retail media marketing. So it is about finding where your audience is and speaking the language on the platforms they love.
Thank you for that. And just to stay with you on the affluent consumers, because we've got a question from the audience. What's the dynamic around global? You talk about luxury, global brands versus, let's say, local or regional luxury brands. Is there a particular, let's say, trend to comment on that front?
Well, I think the global luxury brands still have their advantages in the region, and but of course, as I mentioned, right, the lifestyle and the aspiration of the consumers in the region has changed. Like for example, in China, we also observe, right, if you are like can go viral or you have cultural relevance. And also from our Ipsos global trends, we also see a trend on nostalgia. So people want to go back to their own heritage and historic cultural culture. So that's the winning factor for some of the local brands. And some of the what we call luxury brands in China or in the other regions, they may not have a very high value, but the emotional value may well ahead of the price tag actually. So this is what the consumers in China or Asia is looking for. So you have to be a storytelling and be cultural relevant.
Lovely, thank you for that. And you picked up on a point about nostalgia. I'm going to come to you now, Arno, because I'm conscious that's often a feature of advertising. Are you seeing that used more or less these days, perhaps, than if we were doing this webinar 10 years ago?
Nostalgia, well, that's an interesting topic. What is interesting is that there was a lot of praise at the festival for consistency, from Mark Pritchard to some others on stage. And if you look at some of the awards, Dove got a Grand Prix for effectiveness. Apple got a Grand Prix for a campaign, long-running campaign called Shot on iPhone, where you can see pictures, photographs made on iPhone, but also movies made on iPhone. And one of the film Grand Prix was a film about the copywriter Elon Specht, who wrote the line, "I'm worth it" for L'Oreal, and that's a line that was there 50 years ago. So certainly, if not nostalgia, consistency and using, distinctive assets, a consistent big ID is something that is still big. So I would say rather consistency in that sense.
Okay. Thank you, Archie. Your word about consistency actually comes on to our next question. Actually, it's for you, Mallory. It was one of our clients on the call was interested in the slide you showed about the deportation and how attitudes varied depending on the question. Is that something which has particularly changed in the last 6 months, or is that something that's actually been a consistent and nuanced pattern in American public opinion?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think perhaps how we have talked about it is maybe what's changed. I think, as I mentioned, Americans are extremely divided on immigration policy writ large. I think that's true for many of the stances that this administration has undertaken. But I've been conducting public opinion research on immigration for nearly 10 years, and we know that it is one of those sort of like lingering fault lines. I think, again, how we talk about it has changed because the questions and the policies are a little bit different than they were in the past, right? And we know that it is an area where that nuance exists, right? So that's why we see such wide-ranging percentages, because it depends on how you ask the question and the proposal that you're outlining for the public. And so again, it's things like birthright citizenship or deporting those brought here as children. Those stances are not favored by most Americans, but there is a little bit of latitude for deporting those with criminal backgrounds. And so I think, again, just kind of digging under the hood and talking about the specific proposals on the table rather than just an up or down, like, is immigration good or bad, is really the discussion that we need to be having in the US right now.
Sure. And thank you for that. And we're going to finish with you, Jason. I'm sorry to finish with, I guess it's stories of the year, war and tariffs. Of course, we can't get away from those two words. What does it mean for ESG? Is it taking a back seat in organizations as companies grapple with those front and center topics of the year?
Great question. It's interesting. What it's actually doing is making the role for communications and corporate affairs just busier and more complex, right? There are now more issues to address. And everything is still, are things shifting in priority? For some companies, perhaps, but not for all, right? What we're actually seeing is that what this has uncovered is perhaps new budgets, new resources for the communications and corporate affairs function. Just yesterday, I was sitting with a client and we were talking about how they've unlocked additional budget because of the challenges that the company faces, because of the need to engage more fully on more issues. And so I think we're not seeing companies deprioritize sustainability or ESG initiatives. It's changing the nuance with which they're communicating about it, the lens that they put on it. But it's just a more challenging environment today with more priorities.
Yeah, no, well, not for the first time on this webinar series, we've used the phrase, and I'll use it now, everything, everywhere, all at once. So that seems to be, after our first 191 days of the year. Thank you to the panel for helping us unpick those 191 days and what we're learning. And I hope that puts, wherever you are in the world and whatever your role is, I hope there's some great information for you to use. On the screen in a moment, we're sharing with you some of the further reading for you, the remaining 174 days and beyond, which hopefully, again, will be useful to you in your work as you unpick what we're learning and how we need to all adapt together. So thank you so much to our panel for putting all of this together for us. Thank you to everybody on the call who's joined us today. We really appreciate your company and your participation and engagement. As I mentioned at the beginning, tomorrow you will receive the slide decks and the video recording in your inbox, and we hope you'll join us at the end of September, I think the 25th of September, when we will be looking at global trends. It's a big report that we do. We're trying to take a 10-year sweep on what's happening, what's changing. We hope you'll join us then. But in the meantime, a very good rest of morning, afternoon, or indeed evening. Thank you for being with us, and we hope to be with you again soon at the end of September. All the very best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.